I was lucky in some ways to own my own house at 30, unlucky in a lot of other ways. The money for my small apartment had come from my mom's life insurance and inheritance. I had spent 3 months in our old family home until the memory started to eat me up, and I realized I couldn't stay there. I rented it out and used the rest of the money to pack up and move away. My dad was never in the picture. It was an old creaking flat that needed too many repairs for what I had paid for it. I had taken it because it felt like it had been lived in. The furniture had come in the deal, and it was damaged but beautiful. My favorite piece was a big velvet armchair. The first day I moved in, I noticed a thin voice coming from the walls and brushed it off as my neighbor's talking. It was an old woman's voice, and it sounded like she was talking to herself, endlessly chattering. It was high-pitched, frantic, and anxious. I unpacked my clothes with my headphones in, her voice sometimes drifting in and out between the gaps in the music. I dug out my teddy bear, a fluffy but threadbare thing I had when I was a child. Without knowing why, I buried my face in its fur and breathed in. It smelled like home. The tears threatened to spill over my eyelids, and I blinked them away angrily. This was how things had to be. The first night was almost unbearable. The woman next door was alternating between banging on the walls and singing to herself in muttered, frantic tones. It was so loud, it felt like she was in the room with me. Eventually, it got too much for me, and I knocked on the door of the next apartment, waiting for the old woman to answer and trying to wipe the irritation off my face.
Hello?
A man in his 30s answered the door in a dressing gown, his eyes half closed. It looked like he had just woken up. Look, I know I've just moved in and I don't want to be rude, but could you ask your grandmother to keep it down? She's been banging on the walls and shouting all night, and it's been a long day for me. He straightened up, suddenly alert.
There's nobody in here but me. I was asleep until about 5 seconds ago, so...
He trailed off and looked me up and down with an expression that I couldn't read.
You seem like a nice girl.
I raised my eyebrows. I wasn't sure how that would help me sleep.
The last woman who lived in the apartment was Gloria Jennings, 5 years ago. Do some research and maybe you can get your money back on this place.
His face was weary, as if he had had this conversation countless times. Thanks? I barely had time to get the word out before the door was shut in my face. I tried to sleep, but my mind wouldn't let me. I could hear the old woman crying in the walls, and I felt like I was losing my mind. How could I hear something that wasn't there? Was this some weird neighborhood initiation? I got out of bed, my feet slipping against the cold wooden floor, determined to call the police. The old woman was making agonized groans, so deep and guttural, she sounded like an animal. The second I opened the door to my living room, I pulled my cardigan over my shoulders, an involuntary impulse. It felt like the heating had been off for hours. I froze. Sitting in the velvet armchair was the old woman. The old woman's hair was tangled into a matted bun on top of her head, and she was staring straight ahead. The lamp cast lattices of light over her pale, mottled skin, and I shivered. She must have wandered over, confused about where she lived. How had this woman's carer let her get into such a terrible state? Excuse me? I shivered. My breath frosted out in front of me, silver in the dim light. What are you doing in my house? The woman's voice was low and raspy, as if she had been screaming for hours. My teddy bear was on her lap, and she clutched it with dirty, bleeding nails. "Do you want me to call someone for you?" I asked her hesitantly. The feeling of unease crept up my spine and down my shoulders. Something was wrong. The way the woman was holding her neck was wrong. It looked like the roadkill you drive by, where the little body on the road looks almost like an animal sleeping, until you see the snapped bones and blood. I backed away, suddenly overcome with a feeling of complete dread.
"What are you doing in my house?"
The woman's head turned as she shrieked the words at me, and I realized that her spine was protruding out of her neck, the bones covered in black gristle and chunks of viscera. It looked as if she had half rotted away. The electricity surged, and for a moment we were lit up with a blinding light. I could see the woman's dark eyes, bloodshot, but filmed over like a corpse's. I spent the night shivering in my car. The next day, I sat in the library, poring over public records of the house. I could feel my eyes drooping with the effort of surviving the sleepless night. On the records, everything was patchy at best. I thought of who I could call, who would let me stay while I fixed this, and felt a sharp pain in my chest as I realized there wasn't one person like that in my life. There wasn't one person who would help me. The last one had been my mom. I felt a sudden throb of loneliness so deep that my eyes welled with tears. I just wanted to forget what had happened. If Mom had been here, she would have known what to do. A name, inky black in my mind, popped into my head. Gloria Jennings. I don't know why the man next door told me. I knew he knew more than he was letting on. I considered going to visit him, but the thought of stepping foot in that building made me feel like I couldn't breathe. I typed the name shakily into the ancient public records, and a small strip of information lit up on the screen like a beacon. Gloria Jennings was found dead in her apartment on Thursday, the 6th of October. The 87-year-old died from trauma due to falling down the stairs and was suffering from the late stages of Alzheimer's disease. An investigation is being conducted in regards to the state of extreme neglect that Gloria was found in. I held my hands against my chest for a moment. I imagined an old woman, alone and frightened in her apartment, talking to herself because there was nobody else there to listen. I thought of the unbearable loneliness of lying there at the bottom of the stairs, waiting to die. I thought of my own crushing loneliness, so vast and empty that I didn't know how to stop it anymore. The next night, I went home. I made dinner, set up 2 plates, and put one down opposite me on the table as I ate. I made 2 cups of tea as I watched old talk shows, and when I went to bed, I put my teddy on the mantelpiece. I remembered holding it when I was scared, when I was a child, and how it had made me feel like nothing bad could ever touch me. I woke up to the windows in the living room being thrown open so hard they smashed into tiny shards across the floor. I scrambled out of bed. The screaming was so loud I had to cover my ears as I opened the door to see Gloria, her hands over her ears, knelt on the floor as if she was praying. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "Gloria!" I shouted against the roar of the wind and her frantic screams, and it was as if everything was suddenly suspended in the air. The noise died down to a hush, and the old woman looked at me with her blank eyes, as if she was trying to remember something she had forgotten. "I'm sorry for scaring you. I'm your new nurse." I tried to swallow back my fear and take on a calm, professional tone. "I'm here to make sure you're looked after." I noticed that Gloria's face was stained with tears. "Where am I?" she whispered. the white of her eyes rolling with fear. Where am I? She had looked rotted, a corpse left dead for years, but now in the moonlight, she looked like a frail old woman, wrapped in a blanket, confused and alone, and my heart ached for her. You gave me a real fright, but we're in your house. We're staying here for as long as you need, I told her quietly. I remembered the teddy bear sitting on the mantelpiece and slowly moved my way over as I brought the little bear over to Gloria and placed it next to her. She looked at it for a moment, then reached for it with tentative hands, as if she couldn't quite believe that it was for her. It's a present, I said, to keep you safe. Gloria held the bear out, tracing her fingers over the soft fur. She clutched it to her chest, squeezing her eyes shut. When I went to turn on the light, as I turned back, she was gone. Sometimes Gloria cries. Sometimes she makes my electricity cut out, and it'll be so cold I can barely breathe. But sometimes, on the nights when I hear her sobbing, I'll come and sit next to her and sing a song my mother used to sing for me when I was a child. Well, that'll be the day when you say goodbye. Yes, that'll be the day when you make me cry. You say you're gonna leave, you know it's a lie, 'cause that'll be the day when I die. Some days, the best days, I'll come back home from work and find that my fresh laundry is haphazardly folded on my bed, with a small, dirty flower placed neatly on top. Those nights, I'll put a cup of tea beside the armchair that I never sit in and play old movies. And if I'm lucky, I'll see her sitting there, holding her bear and smiling. I think Gloria was someone very kind when she was alive. She still doesn't know who she is, but I will look after her until she finds out, or until I'm gone too, and can hold her hand as we walk together as old friends to whatever comes next. The horror doesn't end here. Choose your next nightmare for more chills.